Hey everybody, good morning. Thank you so much for joining and being here with us this morning. We are talking about creating culture in your salon business without employees. So what that means is we're talking about salons that are either a hybrid or a booth rental model. And so I am joined by two salon owners, Jean Bradshaw and Nikki Davis, both part of our Rosy Cabinet of Thought Leaders. So thank you guys for being here. Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Welcome.
I'm excited to have this conversation, especially hear your guys' thoughts, because I think that you guys both have really mastered this model of having renters in your business and what this looks like. And so with a growing number of salons that are shifting to rental or hybrid model or just changing their models in general, I think that you're going to have a lot of good insight for a lot of our viewers today. So just to introduce you guys a little bit, Nikki is down in Jacksonville, Florida at ND Artistry Salon. She is still behind the chair as a stylist for over 20 years. And Nikki, you said something recently in one of our Salon Today articles that we did, and you said accountability and a healthy culture promote a happy team and work environment for all, regardless of business model. So I think that's interesting because you came from a commission salon and now you have a hybrid model. So we're going to dig into that a little bit more today. And then Jean has also been a hairstylist for over 30 years, but not currently behind the chair any longer. And she opened her first salon when she was 23 years old with her sister. And she currently has two salons, Mint Salon Block, and those are in Maine. And they're both full rental salons. Did I miss anything? Okay, cool.
That's pretty much it.
Awesome. So we do have a question and answer box. So anybody that has questions as we go today, please drop any of your questions into that chat box, and then we'll make sure we get through them as we go, or by the end of the session, we'll answer all of the questions that you have. So just to get us started, we're talking about culture in the salon. So Jean, we can start with you. How do you describe the culture in your business today?
Well, so I've worked really hard. When I first built my salon, my whole goal was that I wanted people to be excited to go to work every day. And so positivity, support, community was all like foremost in my mind when I was building. And I mostly do that with my guest services team because we have full-time reception. So we have people at the desk like a lot of hours a week. And so I work with that team, and we have our core values that we work on, which is positivity, community, support, and cleanliness.
Love that. Okay, cool. Nikki, what about you?
Um, it was really important for me whenever I abruptly went out on my own. I wanted to keep that kind of family feel, not just with the stylist, but with the clients. I didn't want a place that was going to be cold. I wanted them to be able to feel like they were at home, like that. It was just kind of like they belong there. It was more of like I don't know, they, like everybody knows your name, it was a community kind of thing. And so, in my situation, the people that came over later on, I did have a relationship with, and I trained them, and so it was a little different than just taking in a bunch of strangers. But throughout the process, we were able to still keep that, even when some of them, moved up and went independent and became a booth renter. So I think that's kind of what makes us unique, and I think the clients feel that too, just from our interactions and stuff during the day.
Yeah, I think those are great. And both of you have great values and the culture that you're trying to instill in your company. I would also imagine that any salon owner would also strive to have those things. People want to have those feelings. But how have you guys created those things? So with having renters who are independent, they're not employees to your business. You can't force them to, believe in these things. How do you, as leaders, instill these values to renters, and also, Nikki, for you, some of your employees, as a blended culture? How do you instill these values to get them bought in and to believe in them and to follow, what you have set out for your business?
Well, I think with like, let's say they were just independent coming on, in the kind of, interview process. It's like you're interviewing a tenant if you want them to live in your house and if they're going to be a good fit, if they're going to throw a ton of parties and the cops are going to get called all the time, So like if it was somebody brand new coming in, I would let them know like one, what our values are, the things that, kind of our policies, but I would, they would have to be on board with, for example, we all use Rosy, and we all, even though they have their own merchant accounts, we're still all unified. So we have that team, that teamwork is still there where we can help each other out. And, and we do because we're busy and we can jump in. The phone system is the same thing. I found a cloud-based phone system. It's ran through an app. So we can keep up with clients, they're not just solely on their own responsible. Yes, they are, they're the number one, but we're always, we're all there to kind of jump in and help. So I think they would have to definitely be on board with that. And two, when I partnered with my distributor and I became exclusive with my product line, that was another thing too, because I can offer them education and I supply the color. So they buy their color from me. If they were totally against that, just from day one, it wouldn't be a good fit because ultimately, they win in so many ways and, and the salon wins as well. And you have that consistency across the board, even if I had to send somebody to another stylist that was mine, it's a lot easier than, kind of going into it blind. So those things have worked for me and I think they're pretty important.
Thank you. Jean, how do you instill these values to your team?
Well, I think with our situation, it is different where we do have the individual suites. So people are independent and they can pretty much do whatever they want in their studio. I think to instill the positivity, the sense of community. I mean, I have that conversation with every single person who moves into Mint Salon Block, and there are people who I haven't, rented to, because I didn't think they would be a good fit for that reason. And really, I feel like leading by example, working with my guest services team and really like instilling in them the importance of not gossiping, no drama, staying positive, shutting down any conversation that isn't going to be positive or helpful and just really setting the tone for the whole lobby area. I mean, we have a lot of people, so it's
People do you have
different.
with 2 locations, just to give people a perspective? How many renters do you have in each location?
So we have, I mean, total both locations, I have 77. So there's like almost 40 at each location.
Yeah, so that's a lot of renters for everybody.
It's a lot of people.
That's a lot of
I mean, they do have their own space, so it is nice. They're not like, they can go in their room, shut their door, and then that's it. So that helps because if somebody's having a bad day, nobody has to even really know about it. So
So what I heard kind of from both of you though is that instilling your culture or values is really starting at the interview process. So you're interviewing people sort of like they're renting a space in your home or a building or whatnot. And I think that truly does start. So knowing what your values are up front and then communicating them. And Jean, you said you've turned people away. So I think that's a huge takeaway for people is don't accept everybody that walks in your door, right? Like make sure that it is a truly good fit for what you're looking for, because what a question I have for you guys later on is, what happens if you have to terminate somebody or you have to ask somebody to leave? And so by having these values up front and communicating them and making sure that they are bought into that before they even come into a space removes a lot of barriers later on, right?
Mhm.
And I also love, Jean, you have receptionists. So like, because those receptionists are employees of the company, right? So they are
Yeah.
acting as part of the business and representing all of those values. So those people see your receptionist team or guest service team as the business, and they are setting and continuing those standards every day,
Yes.
which is really great. Okay. If you guys were to pluck and remove yourselves away from the business and you weren't visible for a month, 3 months, whatnot, would this continue? Would these values and the culture maintain in place? Do you guys have that set concretely enough where you would have no worries if you were to step away from it, that would run exactly the same way?
I think so. I know for sure at my first location because we've been there so long. And honestly, some of my receptionists have been there. One of them's been there since the beginning, which we will be open 9 years in this summer. My other receptionist who's full-time has been there almost 7 years, and then the other one's 6 years. So it's pretty solid. Like we have a very solid foundation. And honestly, most of the stylists and professionals renting there, the majority have been there since the beginning as well. So I feel completely confident that that would be fine if I stepped away. My other location I've been at is for 3 years, and it's taken a little longer. I've had more turnover with guest services. It's kind of a younger stylist crowd. It's been a little harder getting it to a solid place, but I feel like we're definitely making progress.
Good. Nikki, what about you?
I think we'd all like to think so, if you're gone for a month that everything's just going to be smooth sailing. But a lot of people do need some kind of, micromanaging, unfortunately, and accountability. And for me, I guess I feel like I got lucky because this past, probably the last 6 months, I had someone come work for me. She's actually like one of my best friends, and it's a part-time job, but her wheelhouse was always in retail management and operations. And so, and she has a really positive, just happy, bubbly attitude, and she's really good with that kind of thing. So, I think now that she's in, I can confidently say if I was gone for a month, everything would be smooth sailing. Now, if there was nobody there and, it's just like no chiefs and all Indians running around, I think it might, kind of slowly, you know, I don't think it would just completely go to heck, but I think that I I think because I have somebody there to kind of keep the structure, it's pretty solid. And I feel like if I came back after a month, everything would be exactly the way it was.
I think it shows the testament of buy-in to your culture, right? So like if they continue that culture without you and it can maintain, they've truly bought into it and they truly believe in it themselves, not just for you as the owner, which would be a good thing. And it sounds like both of you guys have somebody that's like that. Do you guys feel that culture is measurable? Like, can you measure the culture in any way or another? Like, whether it might be like Jean, you had a couple different bullet points, so positivity and education. Like, so like, can you measure in different areas and see like where there's some opportunities for improvements or where you excel at a lot?
I think kind of. I think you could, to a certain degree, measure that. If it's positive, like 80% of the time, or, I mean, obviously there's things happen and everything's not perfect all the time, but for the most part, I think, you could probably kind of grade yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm wondering. I'm thinking for those salon owners that might be considering to make a shift like that and maybe measuring maybe where they're at currently if they're in an employee based model and they're considering to shift to either a hybrid or a full commission. I see that a lot of people are switching straight to commissions. Like, do you want to consider hybrid first? Do you want to like tiptoe into it? Are you going to dive right in? Like, where are we at today? And I wonder if that's something that they can measure is like, is making a change like this going to shift their entire culture, or is it going to shift it for a positive, in a positive way? Nikki, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that from the day to day, your every day, you can kind of tell, you can feel the temperature. Like sometimes, everything's not always roses and butterflies, you can kind of like feel, and then you pay a little bit more attention and you're more aware of what's going on, so I think in that aspect, you can measure it. Um, I I kind of intuitively knew that when my girls were, there was two of them that were switching over from commission to booth runners, and they were the first ones to do that. I had one single booth runner, and she's, been in the industry a very long time. She's very self-sufficient, very mature, and she's a little older. So when she came with me and became a booth runner, she's just a one-man show, so I don't have to worry about her. The other two were kind of in, younger stylists want to do this transition. And so, I did have a little, I don't want to say fears, but I was a little nervous about when they did having that false, like, well, I'm independent now, I can do whatever I want. And I think there was a little bit of that, but I, once again, coming back and kind of like having that accountability, sometimes it took a little, maybe with a certain individual, it took a little bit more kind of sit down and say a reminder of we're all in this together, right? And we're better as a group than we are individually. Um, having that support system, that's why I think a hybrid, um, and the way this works is, in my opinion, is so much better than just a suite, because anybody can just, if you want to go do your own thing and you don't like to have other people, you like it to be, you and only you, then that's great. The suites are perfect for you. But I find in most industries, when you have people that are holding you accountable, that are pushing you, motivating you, and you have that, and it's kind of ingrained in your culture, that is, I think you're going to be so much more successful because of that. Not to mention you're constantly learning and from each other or classes that are offered. I think that's, I think that's what makes it so special.
And we're going to talk about education and leadership and training and stuff too in just a little bit. I have a question that came up for you, Jean, from Jim. He asked, do you think that the younger generation of stylists and the expectations as an independent of your second location is more of a challenge with accepting the salon culture? So essentially, do you think that the younger generation has a hard time adapting and accepting your culture values?
Well, this is something we talked about a lot with our leadership team, with our guest services. I think that COVID had a big impact on the younger stylists. And so I think they do seem more like individualized than the group I have at my first location, because they're older stylists. They, are very much like collaborative, sending clients to each other, working together, borrowing color. Like, it just feels like a real community over there. They have a lot of parties. It's just, the culture is very much like a very close community. And at the second location, they do seem to, it's something we're currently working on, is trying to bring them together a little more. And, we do have some things that we're working on, where we have an education room at that location. So we started last year, and we're gonna work on more this year, is like roundtable discussions. They are interested in education, and so I think doing more education. We did one roundtable discussion, which was amazing, and they loved it. And so we had big you know, everybody sat around and we discussed cancellation policies and price increases. And so business ideas where they can work together and they don't feel alone in making these decisions, and they have people to bounce ideas off. And I mean, I have a huge break room there, so they can go up and hang out and talk to each other, which they do. But it has been different at the second location, and I do think a lot of that honestly had to do with COVID.
Mm. I love that idea though of doing the round table with each other because
Really
it's
fun.
peer to
Yeah.
peer and they're getting some of that advice or suggestions or being able to share their challenges with each other versus somebody coming in and telling them what to do, which I think, to our point of saying a younger generation, nobody wants to be told what to do. And I think that that's a really cool thing that you're doing.
Yeah, it's really fun. Yeah.
Okay. Both of you kind of mentioned a couple things, but my next question is some of the challenges. Like, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that you guys have endured in the business model that you have, and how have you been able to overcome them?
Um, biggest challenges.
I think, well, for me, one of them would be, if something, maybe a stylist, maybe it's, you have a booth runner that is, maybe it's like she's been like, maybe her attitude's been kind of poor, something going on personally and they're projecting it, something's a little off. I've found it difficult to, when it's an employee, you can sit down, have a one-on-one, um, and, talk about what's going on. Now, when you have a renter that's independent, I think that's tough because, you know, essentially they don't have a boss anymore. That's why they're doing it. They want to run their own business. So when they're not falling in line with the culture or what, you know, they're not doing what's expected of them in the building, that's been tough, to like find a way to talk about it, but do it from, more like you know a an owner's perspective, not your boss's perspective, because there's for me there's not much difference. It's like you're still in here, you're still under the label, your business card still has my logo on it, you're representing this brand, my brand, not just your own. And so when there's conflicts there, that's been tough trying to figure out the right approach to it.
Mhm. Yeah, that can be definitely a challenge for sure. Jean, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, things happen. I've had people that were amazing and then started having personal problems that really spilled over into their work and into the salon. And I had conversations with them. A couple people I've encouraged to leave, and maybe they could come back when their life was in a better place. But I just can't, I have too many people that I can't risk the reputation of the business for one person, like, for one person going through something
Yeah.
bad in their life. So yeah, and I
You
mean, I
asked
just usually
people,
approach it in sorry.
you suggested to people to maybe exit for a while, until they can kind of get that through. I think that some people might be really scared to do that. Like that might put a lot of fear on some salon owners to say, no way, I don't want to lose anybody. But I think in a way that means that you're really protecting your culture, your business,
Yeah, you have to.
from
I
everybody
mean, I
else.
feel like, see, I have waiting lists of people that want to get in, and I feel like that's what I'm protecting,
Mhm.
is people aren't gonna want to come there if I let anybody do whatever they want. So, I mean, it is hard. Like, I enjoy letting people be who they are and do their own thing and have their own personality, because I've always been somebody that enjoyed working for myself. And so I wanted to create an environment where people could feel free to be who they are and do what they want. But, you do have to have some boundaries and parameters for them to, work around. Like, I don't let people just hang stuff on their windows. And for me, like, I protect the aesthetics of the common areas, and they can't just put stuff on their windows, and you know what I mean? I have a certain look I want it to be. And so, but that's why people come there. So like, I do have to protect that, because that's the majority of the people who are there. That's why they're there, because they like the aesthetics, their clients like it. We have a certain look where it's like very clean and minimalistic. And so there's boundaries, and it's in the lease. I have a lot of this stuff in the lease. So when they sign the lease, like, they're agreeing to that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point too, is having a lease. Nikki, do you have a lease agreement for your renters?
It's not a lease per se, it's more like an agreement. For me, it's I compared it to, like, if you sign a lease for an apartment and you have a roommate, and then you have a falling out with a roommate, but then you spend the last 6 months stuck in this lease and miserable. I didn't want to put a time frame on them. It's kind of, if it's like a one in, one out, if you're not happy, give me a week's notice, and no strings attached. You can leave, and vice versa. It's reciprocal. So, if it's not working out with me and we can't find a solution to it, then, unfortunately, it kind of protects me as well, because it's that whole one bad apple spoils the bunch thing. If someone,
Mhm.
and I don't, that's a last resort, but it still protects me,
Mhm.
and I'm not stuck with someone there that is, kind of hindering the business as
Mhm.
a whole.
I think that's a really great takeaway too for anybody considering to offer rentals in their business if they're full commission today, is to sit down and write sort of those guidelines or that policy or what you want that to look like, and have that prepared before you introduce anybody into renting. So that way you have those, that clear picture of what that would look like. And you have a no penalty agreement essentially, right? They can leave if they want to leave without that penalty, but your guidelines are sort of in there already. What does it look like? So you guys have this culture for the business entirely. What about any type of conflict between renters or from renter to employee? Like especially you, Nikki, I wonder, like, are there conflicts between like employees being like, why do I have to fold all of the towels and they don't have to do anything? Like, do they have any sort of conflicts or buffers like that? And then Jean, even with you, with all renters, like, do they have conflicts internally that you guys have to try to manage?
I mean, we're a family, you know what I mean? And that's what I said. It makes us a little different. It's always like, so and so didn't do the laundry, they left two loads, and you have that, yes, but it's not like an entitlement, or I don't have to do this. That's something we're constantly pushing in. Like, this is your house, you have a room in my house, you are just, everything you touch, you're responsible for. And it doesn't matter if you're a commission or a booth renter. So it's just kind of a given, but someone messes up, and I've found that it's way more productive if you're hearing it from your peers versus from somebody in charge. Because if it comes from me, it's like, oh, I did, I'm mom's mad kind of thing. Whereas if it comes from one of them, they listen, they actually hear it, because they don't want to upset their friends.
And I think that means something too, if they feel comfortable being able to hold each other accountable to the standards that you have.
Right. Because it helps them too, like, if everything is left a mess at the end of the night, you're the last one in there. Well, that person that comes in at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning the next day, they don't get to walk into a, uh, everything's fresh, like a clean slate. They have to, so it's workable. They would have to go and clean or put bowls away, and that, and that's just, nobody likes that. Nobody wants to start the day like that. So it's just kind of, enforcing that, and, just holding people accountable that way.
Jean, what about you? Any conflicts that you notice?
I mean, it's pretty minimal. I mean, everyone doesn't always love each other, but with the way we're set up and our space is big, it's pretty easy to not have to be involved with somebody. And, if there has been, I mean, there's probably been in 9 years, maybe a handful of times I've had to call somebody and say, hey, can we talk about this? And, usually they are like, yeah, I was kind of petty, and they'll admit that it was kind of silly. And so,
Okay. So they kind of just own up to it and move beyond it.
yeah, because they know at the end of the day, like, it's just not worth it. And they do have their own space, so it's not like they have to be dealing with someone they don't really want to deal with, and they just need to kind of move on.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question, Nikki, this is gonna be for you about assistants. So if you have assistants in the salon with a hybrid, do you let the renters use assistants, and how do you manage if a commission stylist can use assistants first, or if priority is given to them?
So we only have one, well, we only had one assistant because we're a lot smaller than Jean is. There's only, in the whole building, there's 7 of us. But when she was as my apprentice, and she was, even out of school at that point, it ultimately, anybody, if they needed help, could get help. And not just with assistance. I mean, with me or any of the other stylists, it doesn't matter. Um, but you know, if they wanted to bring in their own assistant as well, then that's fine. They can handle it, and they can handle the liability of it and pay them and do whatever, and that could be their own. I don't have that situation. I feel like with renters, you don't double book nearly as much, so you don't really need that help unless you really want to bring someone on. Um, there, maybe there's an unsaid hierarchy of like who gets it and who doesn't, but I think I think they know, like, this isn't your assistant, and if you're in control of your book, so if you need one all the time, then maybe you should get one and not use mine. Essentially, like, an assistant is just there to help the whole business run smoothly, everybody in there. So that, I haven't had a huge issue with that. Once again, and it comes to like mentoring them too, if you need help all the time, then maybe you should adjust your timing, just a heads up, you shouldn't have to use an assistant unless you're paying for one.
Jean, do any of your renters have assistants?
No, they don't. Some of them have talked about it, but no.
And if anybody wanted to have an assistant, it would just be on them to be able to bring them in, find them, pay them, train them, do whatever they need to do. It's sort of like you're off hands with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a little thing in our lease that actually talks about that.
Okay, so you build that in.
That's like their
That's on them, their responsibility. Okay, cool. Do you think I'm just thinking about people that are employee, and Nikki, I know you came from an employee-based salon education, all that kind of thing. Do you think that with the shift in what we're seeing with business owners wanting to bring in renters or move to that model, do you think part of it is because like people are just tired and maybe they don't want to do the education piece of it? They don't want to like grow and do the assistant and make sure that they build up and recycle and start all over. Like, does it kind of give you that sense of like hands off and like you can breathe a little bit, knowing that the renters are sort of like in charge of growing their own kind of thing? Is that any piece of it, of having renters?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I went into this, I didn't go into this wanting to be a hybrid. I wanted to open up a booth rental salon, and when people were ready to leave commission, bring them on over and kind of have the same culture in this environment, that's where the hybrid began. Unfortunately, I had to go a year with just two of us, waiting for the right people. But when they came over, the three of them came over, they weren't ready to be a booth runner. So pretty much overnight, I had to figure out a whole commission side of it too, because they did want to go booth rental, but they were just too young in their career. They weren't ready. You know, they weren't really, the salon closed, our old salon closed. So that was why they came over, so it happened really fast, but it ended up working, so I spent a lot of time trying to find a way to transition them. For me, I mean, as soon as they say I want to be a booth runner, I'm like, God bless. Go, please, because managing people is really hard and it is not my superpower, and yeah, that definitely is a plus. But to add into that, just last night, one of them messaged me, and because I can see their numbers and stuff in Rosy, I can kind of see how their books are. I don't necessarily bring it to their attention, but I could see one has been really struggling, and in my head, I was already thinking, man, she really needs to be commissioned. I think she needs some refining and she needs some structure. And so she texted me last night and was like, I'm going to talk to our accountant, but I was thinking that maybe I shouldn't be a renter yet, so I have to be, and of course I'm going to take her back and help her, but that's my whole MO, is to be able to, like, give them the tools and teach them how to grow their business and their own business. But it's just you know I hadn't had that, and so now it's kind of, I have one that did it and realized, like, okay, maybe I wasn't ready, we have to go back. um and that's totally okay too, because I love them all, and just want them to be successful. But that is something that could pop up.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Okay. We're talking about, so Nikki, I'm going to read something that this came from a piece that you did with, again, our Salon Today piece, but something that you said was, for salon renters, ND Artistry, your salon, offers a sense of belonging in an environment that evokes teamwork. And for commission stylists, there's a tiered system where they can work their way to the top. And when they're ready, they can take the leap to move to be a renter. And if they can do so without having to move to another salon company, which is, I think, the basis of, like, your model. When you did decide to bring in commission stylists, it was like, okay, start at commission, you're ready to move here, now you become a renter, instead of having to turn over or without losing people. So that makes me think about coaching salon. So even for you, Jean, like, do you guys coach your renters at all? Like, are they open to that? Do you ask them, like, can I coach you? Do you want to, know where you're at? Can I help guide you? Or is it totally hands off and, like, they're on their own? Because Nikki, you said, and I know Jean using Rosy too, you can see their numbers. Like, you can see what they're doing in business. Do you guys leave that all alone, or how do you handle that?
I try to leave the door open. It's really based on the individual. I have two that are very polar opposite. One is, they're both very proud. I feel like everybody in there has a lot of pride. They don't want to say that they're struggling. They're tough and they want to just push through it, but I can see it. I I try to communicate to them that, like, I'm here to help you. Having my friend Marcia come on, in kind of a leadership role, she's really been helpful with that. What we recently did, I've had meetings with them. I only had one with them actually since they've only been booth runners for a little over a year. So we had our one-on-one, our little powwow with them when they were still commissioned, and I had it broken down to, what do you want to do in the next, where do you see yourself in a year, 3 years from now? What's your goals? I knew what they wanted to do, so I had those numbers ready for them to show them. Okay, well, here's a breakdown of, like, what a renter's expenses are, just based off of mine, and what, here's your numbers, and taxes, rent, color, etc. And you know, here's the bottom line and whether or not you're on the right path and that you're going to be able to reach that goal. Um, now that they've become renters, you can't have a one-on-one, you know. So, but what Marcia did, she blocked 15 minutes on their schedule and just called it a touch base. So they went into it thinking like, okay, what did I do? And she's like, no, I just want to hear from you. How are you feeling? Like, and just left the platform open for feedback. What can we do to help? What would you do? You have ideas, you know? And then end it with whatever it is that we need to focus on. And I see that looking at the Q&A, one of those things was the retail and how we do things a little differently. And I can go into that later if you want to, but you know, that was kind of a focus, like, you know, and she was able to address it. Like, listen, you know, this retail helps pay for your back bar that you get. And, you know, if you guys aren't doing this, then, you know, here's the breakdown of what that looks like, what you're not selling in retail. And all you have to do is talk about it because it's an amazing product and et cetera, et cetera. So she's able to motivate them, put in perspective, but like it wasn't like you're in trouble. It's just more like a heads up. What do you want to do to grow the business? What can we help you with, et cetera. So we do coach them in that aspect. And with the other one, she and I are going to have a sit down and, you know, like look at her numbers and see, you know, what, you know, where she's falling short and, you know, what we have to do to build her business if she goes back to commission and stuff. So
Perfect. And sometimes this might work too because you are in a smaller group, right? 7 of you in total, where Jean, you've got 75 in total. So how do you handle coaching? Or do you do any coaching in the salon?
So I wouldn't really say I coach anybody. I mean, I've had people, you know, come to me for advice, but one of our core values is support. So we when people come in, I sit down with them, I go over, you know, everything they do, what they specialize in. I help them. We write their bios for them for the website. We have a questionnaire they fill out. We go back and forth with that, and we help them build their business on, you know, what they want to do. Like, we all ask them, you know, who their ultimate client is, what they really want. You know, do they want to do all highlights, or, you know, what they're really looking for to do. And so one of the things we spend time for our guest services team is really discussing like booking the right client with the right professional. That's our whole thing. So we've actually created these booking sheets. So if somebody calls in, you know, we have lists of like all the different categories of services down to redheads, you know, curly hair, short hair, long hair. And we have a list of stylists who kind of specialize, who are taking new clients for those services. So we really work hard at trying to match the right clients, because at the end of the day, if the clients are happy and the stylists are happy, our reviews are good, everybody's busier, we get a lot of new clients, and it just helps everybody's business grow. So we work hard at supporting people.
Yeah, that's good. And that definitely shows. So with you, Rosie, and you were talking about the clients having a good experience. You guys are both using Rosie. How are you using it to help support the guest experience across multiple independent providers? So again, kind of like if I'm the client, I don't necessarily need to know who's an employer, who's a renter. So how are you guys making sure that that guest experience, as they, from booking to service to leaving, that they have a really great experience?
well, with since they're all in Rosie and Rosie, you know, they offer confirmations, they offer you know, text, email. We have a front desk, you know, whether it's, you know, someone's sitting there or not, it creates like a centralized checkout. You know, you're not coming over to the chair with your swiper, and you know, it just seems like you're finishing the service, the retail's there, if they, it kind of like finalizes the service and, and they're booking. But once again, because we all use the same software, it's not like one person is on Square and the other person's on Forest, or we can, it kind of just keeps it just the same around the board. Like we all um once again can jump in to help each other, and being that we're using the same software, I think that makes it really easy to do.
Awesome. Jean, what about you?
For us, I would say the check-in system's really great because, we have people at one of our locations, we have a second floor, we have 16 studios up there. So when we can check that person in and the stylist gets a text and then the stylist can say, come on in, the receptionist can see all that, we know when to send people, you know. So that's been really helpful for us, that since COVID that happened, that whole check-in system. And then it's, we're so individualized and we just customize to what people want. So some people have the online booking turned on, some people don't. I mean, there are some people who aren't on our system, but if they want new clients and they want that support, then I mean the majority is. So
So you talk about kind of scheduling, and the business really owns the communication to the client. So you guys are setting that up in Rosy and sending out the notifications, the reminders, the confirmation, so that the renters don't really have to manage that. They don't have to go in and confirm all of their own appointments. They don't have to do all that own thing. And then your receptionist or your guest service team can see that and kind of stay up on the clients that have confirmed, maybe who have not or whatnot. And then Nikki, I know you mentioned the merchant IDs. Can you explain for anybody listening, if they don't have this set up, how does that work where you have all of your renters and both of you have all of your renters on your Rosy account? How are they accepting payments? Because as a renter, they should have their own separate, right? So how does that work in this one?
Right. Well, so Rosy has two options. They have a booth rental software and then they have the commission. But with the commission, it keeps everybody on the same calendar. The ways ours are set up, each one has their own merchant account through Rosy Pay, and Rosy Pay is competitive. And, so they didn't have a problem with that. It's almost like different locations in our software. So they're when a stylist is checking out their client that is a renter using Rosy Pay, it automatically defaults to their account. So there's none of their money goes through my salon. It goes through the credit card machine, but it instantly goes to their accounts. I could see those numbers, but I don't have access to them. It's completely theirs. And then the rest of the stylists that are commission or myself, it all goes to the default account. And the retail, there's a question on there about the retail.
Yeah,
It also will get rang up through the default account. So, if someone's buying products but they're a booth renter or they see a booth renter, they'll do two transactions there. Nobody has a problem with that. But as far as the renters, it automatically, their name pops up because they're on the service ticket. So there's not really any kind of discrepancy there. We also use Tippy, which is amazing. But the renters don't. They just go through the credit card machine, but that's so the salon doesn't have to absorb all those costs on everybody for the extra credit card fees for gratuities.
well, can we
And
elaborate?
and the answer to that last question, no.
The
Well,
question is, do you charge for those credit card fees to your stylist?
so Tippy, we have it set up to where the client on the gratuity part gets charged the credit card fees for the commission stylist.
It's a
But
convenience fee that runs through.
right, so like if Jean's salon with all those people and she was a commission salon, that's a lot of lost revenue that you're paying for money that you never even saw.
Mhm.
So
I think this question, the retail one, is good for both of you. If Jean, you want to jump in too, it's how does retail work in your business? So does each renter have their own inventory or are clients purchasing from the salon?
So for me, it's both. They can have their own products and sell their own products, or we have a big retail area. They can sell our products and we give them free back bar, and we keep track and give them percentage. And like Nikki said, if they're not selling anything and they want more back bar, then we have to kind of have a conversation about that and say, well, you sold this much and we've given you this much, so.
So you're giving your renters back bar to use, but they have to sell product.
Correct.
Awesome. Okay, good point.
Because my distributors. I partnered with Kevin Murphy, and they are through Evolve where we live. And they give me an allowance for back bar. It's like 10%, for their partners program. And I can pass that on to all of my stylists, whether it's the commission, that helps me because that's my expense, but it's also an incentive for the booth renters too. Styling products as well. That's where, when I started seeing how much I was spending recently since like November and back bar, and they get commission too. It's a tiered commission, but they get at least 10% commission, or they did until we had these little powwows with them and said, hey, what do you suggest? They actually came up with the idea of, well, we just won't get commission checks if the back bar is not covered. And that's what we wanted to do, but they came up with the idea, so it was way better.
Yeah.
But we only carry Kevin Murphy for the most part, and we only use Kevin Murphy color. So they buy their color from me too. And I upcharge them a little bit. So the salon is still generating revenue that way. But I have it on demand. They place an order with me. And if they run out of something during the week, I still have a supply. So they're not having to mix things together that, because they didn't have this, or they're not having to go to the store on their day off. It's just right there, ready to go. It's like faster than Amazon, it's on demand. And so we all kind of win that way. And that helps me be able to supply, reach that 10% and supply them, which is saving them money. So it's even more incentive to, want to stay there and save and, choose to be there versus somewhere else.
How do you manage so if you're purchasing color into the salon and then you're selling it out to the renters, is there a way that you use Rosy to manage that inventory and how you sell it out to them?
Well, the workaround that I found was, at least for tracking purposes, is I created kind of a fake employee that was called booth renter purchases, and so they purchase it through there. The pricing that's for the color, I just make the rate. It's not, you can't sell it for retail to a client, but the retail price pops up, and that has that adjustment that, the increase for convenience and like shipping, and having that on there. So, I keep their card on file, for all their purchases. That's a big one, just having their card saved. So Thursday at 3 o'clock is when I tell everybody to have their orders in. When I finish with my clients, I go through, fulfill the orders. It also, because the inventory part of Rosy is so awesome, and it goes through Salon Interactive. It goes to links to my distributor. And so once I do their orders, and most of the time I already have that color, so when they come in the next day, it's already there. I'm placing my order that night. So everything's came out, it's up to date, and I'm placing my order through Rosy, because it reflects those color purchases.
So each renter, you create an individual purchase order in Rosy for all of those orders so that they stay separate.
Yeah.
Jean,
Well,
how do you manage?
no, I don't. They order it from me. Like
Okay.
I have the back stock, like
You
a
got it.
dispensary, so I can fulfill it.
Okay.
But by the time the next week comes, I've already reordered my actual
Got
inventory.
it. Okay.
So I don't really run out of things. It keeps
Yeah.
it very smooth.
Jean, how do you manage back bar? Because you're providing back bar to your renters. Are you providing color for them also like Nikki's, or are they responsible for going out making their own purchases? And
Yeah, they get their own color. So basically, like in Rosy, we have it set, so if they're gonna sell our retail and use our products, there's a commission percentage you can put into that person's profile. So we give a generous commission and we give 35% back in back bar. So I have their commission set at 35%, and then we can print the report and it will show like for the month what they should get for back bar products, like in value, depending on how much they've sold.
Got it. Okay. So you guys both have, although different business methods, right? So Jean, you're more of a suite, independent, all renters. And Nikki, you have a hybrid, and the models that anybody chooses to do, although sometimes we think, you know, this rental model is maybe the easier way to go because you don't have to do all the coaching, you don't have to do all the, you know, growing and associates and assistants and things like that. There's still a lot of things that you guys are really managing and trying to track very closely to maintain the culture in which you want to run your salon. And I think that that ties hand in hand to the retention. Like Jean, you have a lot of service providers that have been with you for a really long time, and that's a testament to how you manage this. So with people who are considering to, you know, invite renters into their business or change from a commission to a rentals model, what is some advice that you guys would have, or what have been your best successes that, you know, have been really great for you guys?
Jean, you want to go first?
um, I would have to say, well, for me, honestly, the separate rooms is really huge because there's no arguing over music, heat, you know, air. I mean, like they have it all in, you know, they have their own everything. So that's nice, but I feel like people, for me, like we work really hard at, one of our core values is cleanliness. And so we take care of the common areas, and, you know, we have standards for that, and we clean every single night. And, so that's I think people like that, and they like not having to participate in that. They have to keep their own space clean. But it's hard. I feel like in order to bring in enough revenue for a booth rental salon, I mean, you can only charge people so much. You know, you've got to have a lot of people. At least for me, and what we're like, to have all these, you know, 4 receptionists and like all the support staff I have for them. Like I have to have a lot of people.
Nikki, what about you?
You know, Jean and I, we're so, as far as our businesses, I mean, her businesses are huge, you know, mine is very small. There's a lot of similarities, and there's, you know, if my business was ran on a scale like hers, I don't think I could do all these things. I don't think I could get away with it. Some of them, yes, but you know, I think what you're talking about, 75 people, like, goodness, I don't want to fulfill 75 orders. I don't want to do these things. You know, these are just things for like my salon being smaller that I'm able to do. And then as a rental salon, the salon still keeps growing. You don't, you know, you don't top out at just whatever their rent is. And then, you know, it gives them incentive to sell the retail because they get something out of it. And not bringing in their own retail and their own color. Um, I, you know, I think, I don't know. I think that, you know, just based on like our, yeah, I think you can work booth rental into any business. I don't think it's something, you know, the old stigma of what it used to be like, and you just had a whole bunch of independent people and nobody really knew each other. You're all a bunch of strangers. You know, I don't think it's really like that anymore. A hybrid's a great way to be able to bring them together. You know, still have that continuity. throughout the salon, have that culture, starting, you know, from the minute they walk in and you meet them. I think, you know, there's different ways to do it, but, you know, being creative, like we have been with our booth rental and hybrid salons, you know, it gives people a way that they can keep growing, with opportunities, and that the business, the salon can grow as well.
Mhm. I love that. I think so. We're at our time here, and I think my biggest takeaway that I've got from this conversation, and hopefully other people got this too, is if you are either considering to, you know, shift your business, or you're just internalizing the culture that you have today, that different models can work for different people. You guys have very different models of business, and they both work very well for both of you, and you're both very successful at it. And that it's okay, like, don't try to be everything to everyone. And if you just stick to your core culture values that you have and you had envisioned from the beginning, you'll attract those people and those service providers or those renters to your business, versus taking everybody in and then trying to mold them to what you want. So sticking to what you know you have. Jean, you have a great problem where you have a wait list of people trying to get into your business, which is a great problem to have. But it also really shows your community what type of business that you have also. So I think that those were some of my biggest takeaways. And I appreciate both of you being on here and sharing your experience with everybody. I know that it was tremendously helpful for me to understand, and I'm sure other people, as our industry sort of shifts in these ways. Is there any last things that you guys would like to share before we go?
If if anybody has any questions outside of this, I'm always open to help anybody out, and,
Awesome.
you know, or need advice, or, you know,
Do
want
you
to
guys
know.
want to share your Instagram or your website or anything with everybody? Or we can put it in the chat if you want to, and people can take that away.
Sure, I can put it in the chat.
I don't know where the chat is.
Oh, I can.
Oh, right here, okay. Oh, all right. Has there been any?
So we sort of answered some of the questions as we go. So I don't think we have any more right now. One, just can you help me? And I hope that this webinar has helped you a little bit. If you have other specific questions, they can definitely put them in the chat. We can always come back to their questions. Awesome. And this is recorded, so anybody watching right now will get a copy of the recording sent in an email, and have your contact also and your websites to share as well. Great. Well, thank you guys both so much for being here. I truly, truly appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Lori. See
Bye,
you soon.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.